Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Zayin Amar Aleph, 7a of Megillah. We're beginning 3 lines from the end of the page, where the Gemara quotes the Mishnah, which mentioned Matanos LaEvyonim. The Mishnah had said that the only difference between the first Adar and the second Adar is reading the Megillah and Matanos LaEvyonim, that reading the Megillah has to be done in the second Adar, and Matanos LaEvyonim, the gifts to the poor, have to be given in the second Adar. So that the Gemara is just going to use to segue into the topic of Matanos LaEvyonim and Mishlach Manos, as we will see. So the Gemara says, Tani Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef taught, and he quotes the pasuk in Megillah Esther. The pasuk says, Umishloach Manos ish l're'ehu. So the pasuk says actually that they made them lasoso some yemei mishteh v'simcha. They made these days of feasting and joy. Umishloach manos ish l're'ehu, and sending portions a man to his friend. Umatanos LaEvyonim, and gifts to the poor. So the Gemara infers that it says, since it says mishloach manos, so sending portions in the plural, ish l're'ehu, one man to his friend. So shtei manos li'ish echad, that the requirement is at least 2 portions to one person. So it says ish l're'ehu, a man to his friend. So I have to give it to one person, and also it says manos, portion. So I have to give at least 2 items, 2 food items. Umatanos LaEvyonim, and then the pasuk says, and gifts to the poor. But evyonim, poor, here is in plural. So therefore, I understand that it means shtei matanos lishnei bnei adam. That here, it's not just to one person I have to give it, but it has to be to at least 2 people, because it says in the plural evyonim. So I have to give matanos, gifts, to 2 people. Gifts to 2 people will mean at least 1 gift to each. So I have to give a gift to 2 different poor people. Those are the requirements of Purim in terms of Mishlach Manos, sending food portions, and Matanos LaEvyonim, gifts to the poor. Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya Shadar Leil Rabbi Oshia. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi sent to Rabbi Oshia Atma de'igla tilsa, the leg of a third-born calf. So apparently the third-born is extra good, extra tasty, and he sent this, and vigarva de chamra, as well as a thermos or something of wine. So this is what Rabbi Yehuda Nasi sent to Rabbi Oshia. Shalach le, he sent back, Kiyamta banu Rabbeinu u'mishlach manos ish l're'ehu. You have fulfilled the obligation of mishlach manos, because there's 2 things here. There's meat and there's wine. I guess perhaps the Gemara is bringing out that one of the things could be a drink, then that still fulfills the obligation. Now there's a question of the girsa. If you read Matanos LaEvyonim, most take it out, so we'll skip over it. Rabba Shadar Le Mari Bar Mar Biad Abaye. Rabba sent to Mari Bar Mar through Abaye. Abaye was the delivery man, the messenger. He sent Male Taska de Kasva. He sent a bag full of dates. Umali Kasa Kamcha Davshuna, and a cup full of roasted wheat kernels. So this is what Rabbah sent to Mari Bar Mar, with Abaye being the delivery person. Amar le Abaye said to him, he looked at this, what he was sending, and he said, Hashta Amar Mari. Mari's going to look at this, and he's going to say, Ichakla malko lehave dikula mitzavari lonachas. If a farmer becomes a king, he doesn't take the basket off of his neck, off of his shoulders. In other words, Rabbah had risen to prominence. He was now the head of the yeshiva from Bedisa. He was a leader, and here he was, I guess, seemingly he got wealthier, And here he's sending what he would send when he was a regular person. So Mari Bar Mar's going to look at this and going to say, like, the farmer becomes the king and he still sends the same stuff. Doesn't take the basket off his shoulders. So, fine. So Abaye didn't think that it was befitting of Rabbah to send such simple things. Hadar Shadar Le'ihu. Now, Mari Bar Mar sent back Male Taska de Zangvila, a bag full of Zangvila, which is ginger, Umale Kasa de Pilpata Aricha, and a cup full of long peppers. So, Amar Abaye said to him, Hashta Amar Mar. Now, Rabbah's going to respond, Ana Shadri Lechuya. I sent him sweet things, because he had sent him dates and these roasted kernels, which get sweet when you roast them. And V'yu Shadri Lechurfa. He's sending me sharp, hot things. He's sending me ginger and hot peppers. So Abaye also had a comment regarding what Mari Bar Mar was sending back. I don't know what the Gemara wants us to take from Abaye's commentary, but that's what happened. Now Amar Abaye said, Ki nafki mi be Mar. When I left the house of Mar, of Rabbah, to go deliver the first delivery, so Hava Savannah, I was already full, I was satisfied. Ki matai lahasam. Now when I got to the house of Mari Bar Mar, Karivali shisin sa'i. They brought me 60 plates, de shisin mini kadera, with 60 different types of cooked foods. 60 is a number the Gemara often uses to exaggerate, but so he said 60 plates of 60 foods, cooked foods. Va'achli behu shisin plugi, and I ate 60 portions. Ubishula basraisa havukari le tzli kedar. And the last thing I ate was called pot roast. Ubai lemechas tzah. It was so good I wanted to eat the plate afterwards. Some Farshim say it was an edible plate, but so he ate to satisfaction, perhaps bringing out the idea of what a Purim Suda should be. Amar Abaye said, Hainu Damri Inshi, this that I left satisfied and then I was able to eat so much is an expression, or is it it ratifies the expression that people say, Kafin anya v'lo yada. A poor person's hungry, he doesn't even know it. That I didn't realize I left satisfied. I didn't even know I was hungry until I got there. Then all of a sudden I was hungry and I ate a lot. Inami, alternatively, it also could be, it could bring out the expression that people say, Ravcha libesima shliach. There's always space for sweet things. And so that's why he had room. There's always room for dessert type of thing. So he had room for all of these delicacies. Okay. Abaye bar Avin v'Rabbi Chanina bar Avin mechalfi sudasayu lahadadi. Abaye bar Avin and Rabbi Chanina bar Avin, so seemingly brothers, they would switch meals with each other. So Rashi understands that it means that they would switch off years hosting the Purim Suda. One year he would, the other year he would. That's how Rashi learns. The Trumas Hadeshen understands this case differently. He understands that it means that they would give Mishalach Manos this way, because one would send one meal, and then he would send it back, the same meal. And that way they both fulfilled the obligation. Could be they didn't have it, they couldn't afford their own. So one would send it to the other, he fulfilled his obligation, he would send it back. Okay. Amar Rava, a famous line. Rava says, Mechayev inish levesume bepuria. A person is obligated to become intoxicated on Purim, adelo yada ben ar Haman lebarach Mordechai, until he doesn't know the difference between ar Haman, cursed is Haman, and Baruch Mordechai, blessed is Mordechai. Rashi says that levsume means lehishtaker beyayin, to become drunk with wine until they reach this point. where they can't distinguish between cursed is Haman and blessed is Mordechai. Rabba v'Rabbi Zera abdu sudas Purim b'hadei adadi. One time Rabba and Rabbi Zera were having a sudas Purim, the meal, the feast of Purim, together. Ifsum, and they became drunk. Come Rabba got up, shachte Rabbi Zera. Literally means he slaughtered Rabbi Zera. Sounds like, simple reading is he killed him. Lemachar, the next day, ba'yirachami, he asked for mercy, he davened, va'achaye, and he brought him back to life. So Lashana, the next year, Amar le, he said to him, Nesi mar ben avid sudas purim adadi. The next year, Rabba said to Rabbi Zera, come, we should have our Purim Suda together again. Amar le, he said back, Ula b'chol shaita v'shaita misrachish, and he says, not every time that a miracle happens, I'm not willing to take that risk that you'll kill me and have to bring me back to life again. That's the simple reading of the Gemara. The Maharsha says it's not to be taken literally. He didn't actually kill him, but he may have in his drunkenness injure him, and then the next day, maybe when he sobered up, he davened for him, and he became better. Okay, Amar Rava. Rava says, Su'udas Purim sha'achla balayla lo yatsa yidei chavasa. If a person eats their Purim feast the night of Purim, they don't fulfill their obligation. The Purim feast has to be eaten on the day of Purim. My time, what's the reason? Yemei mishtav v'simcha ksiv. Because the pasuk says that Purim should be days of feasting and joy. It has to be during the day. Rav Ashi of Yosef Kamei de Amemar. Rav Ashi was once sitting in front of Amemar, Naga, and it was getting late. V'lo asur rabbanan, and the rabbis didn't come to the shir. Amar le, he said to him, my time lo asur rabbanan. Why are the students not coming? Dilma tridi b'sudas Purim. Are they busy with, maybe they're busy having their Purim Suda. So apparently it was Purim, and this was his answer, Amar le. He said maybe they're busy with their Purim Suda. So it's not clear who's asking who. Rav Ashi was there. He was ready to learn from Meimar, and but nobody else showed up. And one of them asked the other, why are they not coming? And the other one said, because maybe they're busy with eating their Purim Suda because it was Purim. Amar le, he said to him, couldn't they have the Purim Suda last night? Why'd they have it tonight? Amar le, he said back to him, Lo shmiya le lamar, has the master not heard? Hada Amar Rava, that which Rava said, Sudas Purim sha'achla b'layla lo yatzei dei chavaso, that if you have your Purim Suda at night, you don't fulfill your obligation. How can you suggest that maybe they should have had their Purim Suda the night before? You don't fulfill your obligation on the night of Purim. It has to be done on the day of Purim. So, Amar le, he said to him, Amar Rava hachi, did Rava really say this? Amar le in, he said yes. So Tana Minei arba'in zimnin. So he learned it and repeated it 40 times. V'dami le commanded manach b'kisei, and became like it was in his pocket. He reviewed it over and over again to make sure that he knew the halacha, and that it was like a part of him, it was like it was in his pocket. Okay, the Mishnah, a new Mishnah. So now, because in the last Mishnah, the Mishnah used the expression ein bein. There's no difference between the first Adar and the second Adar except da. So now the Mishnah is going to continue the next series of Mishnayos to make similar comparisons, nothing to do with Purim. So we're moving away from the topic of Purim temporarily and making similar types of comparisons. So the Mishnah says, we're on the first wide line. Ein bein Yom Tov l'Shabbos ela ochel nefesh bilvad. There's no difference between Yom Tov and Shabbos except what we call ochel nefesh. Ochel nefesh is food, basically. Food preparations. The difference between... Now there are other differences, as Rashi and Tosfos point out. The stringencies of the punishments of Shabbos are more severe than those of Yom Tov. Shabbos, if a person violates Shabbos with the warning, they could get skila, they could get stoned. Yom Tov is just a regular lav, a regular transgression. Shabbos can also be kares. So, but putting that aside, but otherwise the only difference is, in terms of the melachos, in terms of what's allowed and what's not, is that on Yantif you're allowed to do things that are tzarech ochel nefesh. You're allowed to prepare food. You can cook your food and other melachos, other constructive acts that are involved in preparing food. So, okay, fine. So that's what the Mishnah says. So the Gemara infers, it sounds like this Mishnah holds that in terms of machshirei ochel nefesh, in terms of the preparations for the preparations of food, Shabbos and Yantif are equal. You can't do, not only on Shabbos can you not do machshirei ochel nefesh, the preparations to prepare food, but even on Yantif. What would be an example? An example would be something like sharpening a knife. So using the knife to cut things a certain way could be a malacha, but it could be allowed on Yantif. But preparing the knife, fixing the knife, so that's preparing to prepare. So are you allowed to do that on Yantif? So the implication is that our Mishnah holds no, because it says the only difference is ochel nefesh. That's the difference between Shabbos and Yantif. But machshirei ochel nefesh, the preparations to prepare food, so that, it sounds like Shabbos and Yantif are equal. Says the Gemara, Masnisin de lo Rabbi Yehuda. This Mishnah would be not going like the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya, because we learned in a Brisa. Ein ben Yom Tov l'Shabbos. There's no difference between Yom Tov and Shabbos, ala ochel nefesh, except for preparing food. That on Yom Tov you're allowed to prepare food, you're allowed to cook, and on Shabbos you are not. That's the first opinion, that's the same as our Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda matir af machshirei ochel nefesh. But Rabbi Yehuda allows even machshirei ochel nefesh, even the preparations of the preparations to prepare food. My time of the Tanakama. Ask the Gemara, what's the reason of the first opinion? Why is it limited to ochel nefesh and not beyond that? So Amakra, because the pasuk says, the pasuk where we learn that you're allowed to prepare food on Yantif is a pasuk that says, on the first day of Pesach, it's a Mikra Kodesh, and on the seventh day, it's a holiday. It says, Kol malacha lo yaseh bahem. You should not do any malacha on them, ach asher yachel echol nefesh, except that which will be eaten to all people, something that's normal for all people to eat. Hu livado yaseh lachem. That alone you can do for yourselves. So it says, who? That alone, says our Gemara, who v'lo machshir. Of that alone, the preparation of the food, but not machshir, not the preparations of the preparations. That's the Tanakama, that's the first opinion. Rabbi Yehuda responds, Amarkra lachem. It says you can do it for yourselves. Lachem l'chol tzarcheichem. For you, for all your needs, whatever your needs are, you can do. So even machshirei ochel nefesh, even the preparations, like the sharpening of the knife, etc. Maybe another example would be chopping wood for fuel or something like that. V'idach nami haksiv lachem. Now, what will the Tanakama say to this? Right, it says lachem, for you, which Rabbi Yehuda is saying means whatever you need. So they'll say lachem is to teach you. You can prepare food for you, but not for non-Jews. A Jew is not allowed to cook on Yantif for a non-Jew. And lachem v'lo for you and not for your dogs. You can't cook for your animals on Yantif. You're only allowed to cook for other Jews. Okay, so that's what lachem teaches you according to the Tanakama. V'idach nami. Now, what about Rabbi Yehuda haksiv hu? The pasuk says it. Hu levado. It alone you can do. It sounds like only the actual food preparation, not the preparation for the preparation. So he says ksiv hu uksiv lachem. You're right. It says it alone, but it also says lachem, all your needs. So how do we reconcile that? The following way. Kan b'machshirin she'efshar la'asos me'erev Yom Tov. Kan b'machshirin she'efshar la'asos me'erev Yom Tov. It depends on the preparations. Preparations that it was possible to do Erev Yantif before Yantif. You're not allowed to do on Yantif, you have to do it before Yantif. That Rabbi Yehuda will agree to. But preparations that you could not do before Yantif, you couldn't do them Erev Yantif, those you're allowed to do on Yantif. The example Rashi gives is back to the sharpening of the knife. If the knife was already dull before Yantif, so you should sharpen it before Yantif. So you're not allowed to sharpen that on Yantif, you have to sharpen it before Yantif. But if it got a dent or something on Yantif, it was being used on Yantif, it got the dent, so now it needs to be repaired to be able to use that, would be an example of something you couldn't do before Yantif, and you'd be allowed to do it on Yantif. You could fix the knife on Yantif. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, but our Mishnah holds that only Ochel Nefesh is allowed, but not Machshirei Ochel Nefesh, not the preparations of the preparations. Okay, the next Mishnah says, Ein bein Shabbos l'Yom HaKippurim. There's no difference between Shabbos and Yom Kippur in terms of the punishment for transgressing, for doing malacha. Ela shezeh zidono bidei adam, v'zeh zidono bekares. The difference is that if one purposely violates Shabbos, so their punishment is bidei adam. It's at the hands of man, again, with the proper hastra, the proper warning. So then the person's punishment will be at the hands of Beis Din. It will be stoning at the hands of the Beis Din. V'zeh zidono bekares. But Yom Kippur, the punishment is not at the hands of Beis Din. It's in the hands of God. It's kares, spiritual excision. Okay, so that's the Mishnah. Again, the Gemara infers, Ha'le'inyan tashlumin, zeh v'zeh shaving. It sounds like in terms of paying for damages, they're equal. What does that mean? So we have a concept in halacha called kimle b'derabamine, that if a person transgresses two things at the same time, they only receive the more severe punishment. So if a person would violate Shabbos as they're damaging someone else's property, they would not have to pay for the property because they're going to get killed. And kimle b'derabamine says we give them the harsher punishment and not the lighter punishment. The lighter punishment would be to pay the monetary damages. So they would not have to pay. So that's true if they're going to be killed in human court. What about if the punishment is kares? It's not a punishment that we are in control of. It's through the heavens. So is the person still exempt from paying in that situation? So the implication of our Mishnah is yes, because it says there's no difference between Yom Kippur, between Shabbos and Yom Kippur, except for one is punished by a human court and one is kares. It sounds like in terms of whether you have to pay for damages that you caused while violating the prohibition of malacha, you don't have to pay the damages. Says the Gemara, Mani Masnising, who is our Mishnah like? Who's the author? Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana. It's like Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana. The Tanya, because we're learning a brisa. Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana haya oseh es Yom HaKippurim kishabbos l'tashlumin. Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana treated Yom Kippur like Shabbos in terms of paying. That ma Shabbos mischaya b'nafsho upatur min tashlumin. Just like Shabbos, because a person is mischaya b'nafsho, a person's life is, they're liable with their life for violating it, so they're exempt from paying monetary damages. Af Yom HaKippurim, so to Yom Kippur, mischaya b'nafsho, one is liable for their life for violating it, upatur min tashlumin, and they are exempt from they're exempt from paying. That's the opinion of Nechunya ben Akana, so we're saying our Mishnah goes like him. Okay, Tanan Hasam. We're learning a Mishnah there in Makos. The Mishnah says, Kol chayve krisos shalaku, niftaru midei krisasan. A person who's supposed to get kares, let's say for violating Yom Kippur or something like that, so if they get malchus, they get lashes in court, so then they will not receive kares in the hands of the heavens. Shenemar, as the pasuk says in the context of malchus, of lashes, it says v'nikla V'nikla achicha leinecha. Your brother will become light in your eyes after receiving lashes, but it calls him your brother, which teaches me that kivan shalaka, once he's gotten malchus, once he's received his lashes, harehu ke'achicha, he's like your brother in that he's no longer, if he's like your brother, it means he's back in the fold, he's not chayiv kares. That's the implication. Once he gets malchus, if he gets malchus, if he gets lashes in the human court, then that will exempt him from malchus, from kares, from spiritual excision at the hands of the heavens. Divrei Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel. That's the opinion of Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel. So that's a Mishnah in Makos. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said about this, Chalukin alav chaveirav al Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel. The other rabbis argue on that. They disagree. And they hold that even if you get malchus, you still get kares. Now, why does he say the other sages argue? The Gemara doesn't say, but it's implied from the next part. So the Gemara continues and says, Amar Rava says, Amri Bei Rav. They said in the Beis Medrash of Rav, Tanina, we're learning our Mishnah. Ein ben Yom Kippur and Shabbos. There's no difference between Yom Kippur and Shabbos. Ela shezez dono bidei adam. Vizez dono bikaris. The only difference is that Shabbos is punished bidei adam at the hands of man, and Yom Kippur, if one does malacha on Yom Kippur, so then Zdono is bikaris, then they get punished with kares. V'imisa, but if it's true what we just learned, that Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel said that if you get malchus first, then you don't end up getting kares, idi b'idei adami, then they're both at the hands of man. Even Yom Kippur will be punishable at the hands of man through malchus, through lashes. So this would explain why Rabbi Yochanan had said that the other sages argue, because our Mishnah seems to argue on Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel and holds that it's not punishable at the hands of man, or even if you would get malchus, but you'd still get kares. That's what our Mishnah seems to hold. So Amar Rav Nachman says, no, it could be other sages agree to Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel and hold that if you would get malchus, then you would not get kares. But Hamani bar our Mishnah is a different opinion. Our Mishnah, who's our Mishnah? Rabbi Yitzchaki. It's Rabbi Yitzchak to Amar who says, malchus b'chayve krisus leka. There is no malchus ever by chayve krisus. Anything that's chayev kares is not subject to malchus. Ditanya, like we learned in a brayso, Rabbi Yitzchak Omer, Rabbi Yitzchak says, chayve krisus b'chlal hayu. The Torah generalized all, or many of the chayve krisus, many of the situations where one will get kares. Many of the situations have to do with forbidding relationships between family members and such, so relatives. So there the Torah has like a catch-all pasuk that says all those who do it will get kares. Has a catch-all pasuk. So it was all generalized. And then says the Gemara, says Rabbi Yitzchak, V'lama yatzas kares ba'achoso. So why then did the Torah specify by one specific relative, it repeated and kind of specified kares, which is by one who marries his sister. So, which is obviously forbidden, and chayav kares. So it specifically mentioned kares there. Why? It generalized all the forbidding familial relations are kares. So why did it speak out specifically by one's sister kares? So it's laduna b'kares v'lo b'malchus. It's to infer and say, and really to teach us about all the other cases, that it's kares and not malchus. There's no malchus. There's no lashes. Even though generally speaking, one who transgresses a negative prohibition that doesn't have a more severe punishment in court, such as the death penalty, they'll get malchus, they'll get lashes. But Rabbi Yitzchak says, but a case, we learn from here that something that gets kares, even though it's not in a human court, does not incur lashes in a human court. That's his opinion. So that could be our Mishnah, which holds that there's no difference, that Shabbos is punished b'dei adam, and Yom Kippur Shabbos is punished at the hands of human courts, and Yom Kippur is punished at the hands of the heavens only, because Rabbi Yitzchak holds that if there's kares, there's no lashes. That's one possibility. Rav Ashi Amar Af Yigul Tema Rabbanan. Rav Ashi says no, it could even be like the Rabbanan who argue on Rabbi Yitzchak and say that there is malchus here. So what does the Mishnah mean? So the Mishnah just means Zeh Ikers Dono Bidei Adam, V'Zeh Ikers Dono Bikaris. All it means is that the primary punishment for violating Shabbos is through man, which is skila, which is stoning at the hands of the courts, and the primary punishment for Yom Kippur is kares. That's the normal case if it's done on purpose. But as Rashi says, it could be our Mishnah will agree that if the guy received a warning and accepted the warning and went ahead anyways and violated Yom Kippur and then got malchus and then they got lashes in court, because then they'd be liable for lashes, it could be that our Mishnah might agree that then they'd be patur, they'd be exempt from kares, like Rabbi Yitzchak said. But that's just not the normal case. Our Mishnah is talking about the normal case. The normal case is that they didn't get warned, and yet they and therefore the normal punishment would be kares. Okay.